What does a regional bank CEO predict will happen with the regional and the global economies? That's the topic of today's edition of Inside AB. Jeremy, you recently spoke to Alex Coelho, the CEO of Al Hilal Bank. First of all, tell us a bit about him and who he is.
Yeah, so Alex is just this month completing his first year in charge at Al Hilal. Very experienced banker, 20 years in the industry. He's also worked in various corporate and private institutions, and he's a lecturer at NYU in New York. So it's also Al Hilal's 10th anniversary this year, so it seemed like a good time to talk to him about his first year in charge and also the environment in which he's working.
Speaking of the environment in which he's working, I guess this is a quite broad question, but what did he have to say about the state of the global economy and how he sees the outlook looking forward?
Yeah, well, this was actually very interesting. He was very bullish on it, actually. He said, I'll have to quote you on this, unique in my almost 30 years career, the emerging market is now more mature and developed, and the developed market has learned its lessons from the 2008 crisis. So he says that because of this convergence, there's basically no concern today about the environment for growth. So incredibly bullish. And then when I asked him about stock markets and whether they were going to overheat, he said no. He said they'll probably level off a bit after a couple of sort of bonanza years, as he called it. But he didn't see any problems there. So like I say, very confident in the growth of the global markets.
And bringing it closer to home, what did he have to say about the outlook for the economies in this region?
Okay, yeah. He was a little bit more circumspect, of course. It's been a sort of slower couple of years. But he said he didn't see anything to worry. He said 2018 has been about consolidation. And he says that 2019 will see growth again. When I asked him about Saudi Arabia, of course, there are huge plans there. He said he's optimistic about that, but he did say it's going to be a marathon, not a sprint. So let's not expect overnight miracles. It's a sort of long-term play.
Interesting. And with regards to sovereign and personal debt, which is always a very interesting issue for people, what did he have to say?
Yeah, on sovereign debt, I asked him about this because, of course, with the oil slowdown in recent years, the GCC nations have been sort of going to the markets a lot more and borrowing more to sort of plug that gap. He wasn't overly concerned by that. He said sovereign debt's like good and bad cholesterol, in that there's a good and a bad type to have. He said if you go to the markets properly, he says that's good, and you should do that because that's how you grow, and especially in sort of slower times, that's when you need to keep the investment flowing. So not a problem with that, he said. Personal debt, a little bit more circumspect there. He said, well, we always have to watch it, but he didn't think there was too much of a problem. He thinks that the Al Ittihad Credit Bureau, which was established last year, has done a good job. He said it's helped banks, but it's also helped individuals as well, because if you've got a good credit rating, you can borrow confidently and sensibly, and again, that helps everyone.
Interesting. So, I mean, another hot topic this year has been value-added tax and what effects that's going to have on the economies of the UAE and Saudi Arabia and eventually the rest of the GCC. What did he have to say about VAT?
Yeah, he's a fan. He says it keeps the economy sharp and competitive, no question. I then asked him about any worries over inflationary pressures from that, and he said no. He said that inflation comes more from sort of the demand side, and he doesn't see there being a problem there on the demand side. Of course, that's because we're in a slightly slower economic environment at the minute. So probably because of the time we're introducing it, that's taken the pressure off what could have been happening there in terms of inflation. So not a problem.
And in terms of cryptocurrencies, I mean, the different bank CEOs around the world have said a lot of different opinions about the future of cryptos. Did he weigh in on that at all? He did.
He didn't say he's not a fan of cryptocurrencies, but he said it's far too early to make an assessment on that. He says there's just not enough data, so he would caution against investors sort of going in sort of with both feet. Blockchain is a different story. He said it's going to be important for all financial institutions in terms of all their processes. He agrees that it's potentially game-changing technology, and Al Hilal Bank is looking into it.
And I mean, in terms of his own bank, how does he see the next year? I mean, the future of Al Hilal in the UAE?
Well, he's confident, given what he said about the global environment. He thinks for all banks that they're in a good place. He thinks the amount of regulation worldwide is appropriate and it's about right. He doesn't see any systemic problems. So he said it's all about operational efficiency, And he says it's all about getting the digital side of things, obviously cyber issues, and managing big data. He did say that the big data, you need to know how to read that customer information. He said, do that and you'll be a step ahead in the game.
That's interesting. It sounds like he does have quite a bullish attitude indeed, which is...
He does. I was surprised just by how confident he was in the global and the regional environment. But it was great to see. He's a very experienced guy. He knows what he's talking about.
Interesting. Well, thank you. So I'm Bernd Debusmann, and this is Jeremy Lawrence, and you're watching Inside AB. Tune in every weekday at 10 a.m. and subscribe on YouTube. Thank you.